Hello my bookish dweebs and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So I read 3 books in January, not the greatest reading month I've ever had. In fact, it's a very small reading month. Couple of things, again, I'm using this as an excuse quite a lot at the moment, but just kind of routine changes. January is a bit of a different routine for me. There was elements where I wasn't at work for different purposes, so I didn't go through my usual routine of reading on my lunch break, reading whilst I'm driving to work, or listening to audiobooks, whatever you want to refer to it as. But there was also a longer book in here as well that meant that took some time. So I'm going to go through my 3 books and then I'm going to talk to you about whether I like them or not. This isn't going to be the longest video, as I said, because how long can 3 books be about? Yeah, you can then let me know whether you read them, whether you agree with my opinions, and let me know what you read in January. And I'm also going to do a bit of a, I hope to kind of read in February sort of deal. So the first book was The Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Now, I'm conscious that somebody keeps commenting saying stand still with the books for a bit so I can see the titles. Now, I am talking about them so you could hear that, but there you go. That's the cover. Naomi Novik, Deadly Education. Got a little scuff here because I bought it secondhand, but this was the first book I read in January. And it was a book that I got as part of my 12 days of Christmas thing. I don't know if you remember that, but basically my partner decided to randomly buy me 12 completely random books from different genres, from different charity shops, from online, all sorts of stuff. And I opened them in the 12 days leading up to Christmas. It was great, loved it. In fact, I think there was 10. Yes, there was 10, not 12. But this was one of the first ones that I opened, and it's a quite interesting concept and I was really excited. This was one of the books that I had on my wish list because it sounded like something I was going to be really interested in. It's kind of a YA, I kind of think, because it's set at a school, a magic school, think Harry Potter. But imagine Harry Potter where everything is incredibly dangerous. You could literally die in the middle of the night because a creature has crawled down the pipes and eaten you and devoured you and then destroyed the whole room. It sounds very dark, and a lot of the book focuses on this dark element. So it focuses on Elle Higgins, who is our main character. She is, it describes here, uniquely prepared for the school's many dangers. She may be without allies, but she possesses a dark power strong enough to level mountains and wipe out untold millions. Never mind easily destroy the countless monsters that prowl the school. So the whole book is focused around this character Elle and her idea that she is more powerful than everybody else. And therefore it kind of creates this awkward dynamic where it just sounds like an ego trip the whole time. There's not a lot of story going on. It didn't blow my mind with what was going on. It's like a Harry Potter where you have a start and you have an end. It just felt like it was just her talking about her inability to make friends and some of the weird things that happen in this school, and her moaning about her mum and her past and the fact that that's maybe why she can't make friends, all this sort of stuff. Talking about how powerful she is, and if she wanted to, she could easily destroy all these monsters, but she doesn't. And then at the end, things start to kind of move forward, but it's way too late at that point. And I thought to myself, I have no idea what I've just read there. I don't quite get what the point in any of that was. My only hope is that I know this is at least a trilogy, if not more, so that possibly the second and the third books. Now we've established some characters, we've established the world, can go on to kind of fulfill that, okay, let's actually get some plot going element, because this was underwhelming in plot terms, as I said. It was a bit of a shame because also the main character, Elle Higgins, wasn't, as I said, particularly likable. I don't know whether it's because it was just her talking about how she can't make friends and how things weren't particularly great at school and she's incredibly powerful, and as I said, all that stuff before. Either way, just not that likable. Therefore, the fact the whole book was about her talking, a lot of monologue sort of stuff, it just really wasn't a big thing for me. I wouldn't say it's a bad book. There are elements of it enjoyed. There's a nerdy aspect to this that I'm always going to be a big fan of. The magic elements, the idea that she's quite powerful, the fact that it's in a school, you know, you're going to get those slight Harry Potter vibes. So those things I liked about the book. Other than that, wasn't fantastic. I like the front cover. I'm really hoping the second book's better. If you read this first book and had similar feelings to me and then decided to continue on to the second one, do let me know if the second one improves upon it, because there is a lot of potential in this that I think where it could be really, really good. So let me know. But that was my first book, A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. The next book was Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey, and this is a classic. If you are a fantasy fan, you will have heard of Anne McCaffrey. She was doing dragons before George R.R. Martin was doing dragons, before Robert Jordan was doing dragons, all sorts of stuff. Is Robert Jordan doing dragons? He must do dragons. She was around before some of the greats. She was around when you're talking like J.R. Tolkien times. I think there's probably this fantastic history of she was a female writing fantasy, so at the time probably wasn't recognized in the same way that she would be now, because, you know, we've progressed and we're not idiots anymore about genders and things like this. Basically, this is now popping off, and I think it probably has popped off like 30 years ago, but this is now popping off for me. They've done a rerun of all the front covers, and I think there's kind of like a whole special editions thing coming out all over the place as well. So I picked it up because I saw it in Asda for £5, and I thought I cannot say no to one of the classics. I'd never read it before, I'd heard it was good, and it's about dragons, and who, if you're a fantasy fan, doesn't like dragons? They're big, they're cool, they're scary, all that sort of stuff. So Dragonflight very much does feel like an introductory book. I think the idea here is there's an initial trilogy you can read. And then if you want to, you can kind of carry on reading the series, but you can just stop at the trilogy if you need to, because the series is like 20 odd books long or something like that, written by like children or cousins or anything like that as well. So there's some other family members have come in and supported with the series to kind of build off a kind of estate, as it were, and all this sort of stuff. The first one, yeah, so you can see, don't miss the original trilogy. There you go. I knew it. This one focuses on Lessa, who is an outcast survivor who has this special ability to communicate with dragons directly, and she's the first person to be able to do this. She doesn't want to tell anyone else because it's similar to kind of most other books where people have special powers. She's worried other people might be as fearful of it, that they may think it's dangerous that she can do this, and therefore attack her or shun her or kick her out or take advantage of her powers, all these sort of stuff. So she doesn't tell anybody about it. She just kind of uses it to benefit her. She's also quite a skilled, I think, dragon rider and dragon fighter and all this sort of stuff. So she's pulled into a war and she's asked to help, and essentially then goes off and does this. And it was good fun. Now, as I said, it does feel like an introductory book. It feels like, and I'm not sure if it is because I've not done the research, but Anne McCaffrey's kind of first foray into fantasy. She thought, I want to write a fantasy book about dragons, and it's a little rocky and it's a little bit underwhelming in places, and it doesn't feel like a complete idea, but kind of similar to Deadly Education. I imagine the second book is where things really start to kick off and where this then became an absolute classic. You do get that sometimes with a lot of the kind of older, especially fantasy books. I think the first one's not fantastic, but give it some time, get into the series, because the series is brilliant. And I'm not saying this is bad in any sense of the word. It's really well written. I think the start of it was a little bit off-putting because of the era in which it's written. It does feel a little bit older, the kind of writing style, but you soon get into the flow of it and you soon start to get into the characters. There is a kind of romantasy element into it if you're into that. Not too strong where like Fourth Wing and these other ones where it feels like it's taking over the plot. It just feels like there is a female, it's about a female lead, and she's kind of falls in love with this kind of interesting, genuinely interesting man. And that's a part of the story, but it's not the bit that takes it yet. Anyway, but good. Love the front cover as well. Think it's a classic. I can understand why this is going to go on to be fantastic. I do want to pick up the other books at some point. I really struggle with series, but one of my bookish 2025 resolutions is to try and crack on with series a bit more. Am I going to finish 19 books? No. Might I try and finish a trilogy? Yes. So that's Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey, and that was the second book I read in January. The next book and the final book I read in January, literally the last day of January I finished this, was The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. And this was an epic, and it was long, and it was slightly painful to read. So this follows the story of numerous characters, the Barnes basically, and their kind of the mother, the son, the dad, the daughter, all of them, and their kind of experiences through their own childhoods and adulthoods and all sorts of different stuff. Now, I listened to this nearly 99% of it in audiobook. I think I read one chapter possibly physically. There is an element to this book where it jumps around the characters quite a lot, and at the start it does tell you who you're reading about and who, therefore you're like, okay, I know what's going on here. However, there is an element as well where later on it starts to kind of throw around characters all over the place where you're like, I have no idea who I'm listening to or who I'm reading about now. I think the punctuation at some points tries to give it away, who's who, what you're reading about, that sort of thing, but it doesn't do a fantastic job in the audiobook, and it really made me struggle with that. So that's one small element that I wasn't a big fan of. The other thing also was that the characters just didn't feel great to me. JP, the young boy, or the boy of the kind of story, is the only one whose story I really cared for. The mother's was quite interesting as well, because it's the only one that features like a death and features a sad element to it. But other than that, I wasn't that invested. It's not like some of these other great epic books I've read that are like 600 plus pages long, where you kind of go through the whole journey of somebody's life, where I was felt so immersed in their lives. I just didn't feel that at all with this one, really. It's difficult because I don't want to sit here and say it's bad. I know it's a good book and I did enjoy it. I would come out of this saying I did enjoy it, but it didn't make me feel the same way that the Heart's Invisible Furies did, for example, or One Day. These other similar books, One Day less so because it's not as long, but these other similar books that are very long, they're epics. You think, God, how can someone talk about that thing for that long? But then you finish it and you think, I know how they talked about it for that long because it was amazing. Their story was amazing. Didn't quite feel that with this one. I feel like it's one of those books that at some point I may do a reread of and think, yeah, okay, that's much better now. I get why people are raving about that one. But for now, I think it was a tad underwhelming in my opinion, though that's my opinion. Remember, I know a lot of people love this. In fact, I don't think I've seen anybody agree with my opinion that I thought this was underwhelming. I think everybody said this was amazing. But I'd probably give this like a 4 out of 5. If you know my incremental systems of 0.25s, you know 4 is very average for me. So yeah, that's The Bee Sting by Paul Murray, and that's the last book I read in January. So then I thought I'd just talk quickly on a couple of books that I am going to be reading in February to give you an idea of what to expect probably in my next video or next end of February video anyway. And the first one is The Sisters by Claire Douglas. Now I'm currently currently reading this one, and I'll be honest, it's awful. I have no idea what the point of any of this is. Basically, it's about a girl whose sister, I think, has died, and there's a mystery around how she died. She thinks she killed her because she was in the car with her the night that she died, but then she's got this friend or person that she's moved into this house with, and her brother, of whom she's also having a relationship with now, who it sounds a little bit suspicious, and I'm like, why is this character here if she hasn't also got something to do with it? So I don't know about this. I'm not 100% sure if it's something I'm going to enjoy. Usually Claire Douglas's I do enjoy, but this one feels a little bit passive. There's an element of Claire Douglas's thrillers where they're not quite like other thrillers, where they are fast-paced, they're constant action, there's constant twists. The chapters always finish in a cliffhanger. That doesn't happen with Claire Douglas books. You do still get that element of twists, and it feels like slightly more mature sometimes, I think. Yeah, and I'm just not really sure I'm getting that. There's gripping, claustrophobic, Marie Claire, and addictive, The Sun. So we'll see. We'll see if this one gets better, but that's the first book I'm reading in February. And then the next book is The Women by Kristin Hannah, and this is a book that I've not yet got the physical copy of. Kristin Hannah is an author I love. Every book I've read of hers so far I've had massive respect for. I love the concepts behind them. I love the fact they're about powerful women. I love the fact they're often historical fiction. I love the fact they're often quite gritty. They're not overly heroic all the time. Sometimes they are struggles. They are difficult choices being made in books, and I absolutely love those things. The Women, I have no idea what it's about, and I'm going into it with that, and I don't want to learn too much about it because I've started loving going into books with no idea what they're about, especially if people have rated them highly, because I'm like, I have no idea what this is. Even the blurb, I've not read it. I also wasn't aware how recent a book it was. I thought this was one of the books where if anybody said Kristin Hannah, everybody had already read The Women, and they say, go read The Women. But I went to go pre-order the paperback the other day, and it said that's not out till like mid-February, which is lucky because it's actually my February follower reads of the book, one of the books that you pick for me to read. Lucky it comes out in February because I've got that on pre-order now. That should be arriving, I think, I want to say late teens February. So gonna get the audiobook of that one started because it's also available at my Libby. So I may actually have read or listened to the audiobook before I get the physical book to show you that I'm reading that book. But really excited to read this. Love Kristin Hannah. Love everything I've read of hers so far. I think this could go on to be one of my books of the year. We will see. But yeah, that's going to be the second book that I likely read in February. So that's my little January reading roundup, and that's my February look at what I'm going to be reading in February. Very short. I probably will end up reading more books than the 2 I suggested in February because I'm hoping to beat 3 in February. Though it is a short month, and I've got a busy, I'm away for a few days in the middle of it, and we've got some busy appointments going up and stuff like that. But either way, let me know if you've read these 3 books. Let me know if you've read the other 2 books that I suggest I'm going to be reading in February, and just let me know if you're having a good time. Let me know what you're reading. I love to know what you're reading. But yeah, either way, drop a like, drop a comment. If you haven't yet subscribed, just subscribe. Goodbye.